me off my show, will ya? I mean, your show. Anyway, you looking for things to review? Let's see you tackle some Wii shovelware. Sweet! I've always wanted to play this, but I've never wanted to give it the dignity of a purchase. Well, better get to playing, because it looks like I found my next review! Well, that was awful. Hi, welcome to the SDP. I'm Kevin, the happy hipster.
僕はイチゴアニメの郷土ホストだ。
Previously on the SDP, I had regaled you with a tale about the rise and fall of the initial D arcade stage series of coin-op racing games. The short of it was that, the way I saw it, its death was catalyzed by a rival title, The Fast and the Furious, a far less enriching experience. Well, after two arcade sequels, Superbites in 2006 and Drift in 2007, the game made its first home appearance for the Wii, swapping out its movie license for another familiar name, Cruis'n. For gamers of a newer generation, let me introduce you to a little title called Cruis'n USA.
This 1994 arcade game was a joint project between Midway and Nintendo, and it ran on hardware which was intended to form the basis of the Nintendo 64 console later on. Even though that didn't exactly come to pass, the game was nonetheless a launch window title for the N64. But was it any good? Well, with its linear track design and rubber band AI, it was certainly far better in its day.
And the same is true of our current subject, but unfortunately its day had passed long before it even came out. It's Cruis'n for the Nintendo Wii, and it's the subject of today's review.
Cruis'n features 12 tracks and 12 playable cars, classic and modern alike. Models like the Nissan Skyline and Pontiac GTO were used to great effect in the Fast and Furious films, so at least they got that part right when making the original arcade version. But for the home port, most of the game's content will need to be unlocked, the courses by playing through a single-player career, and the cars by accumulating winnings from your races. However, the later cars, whilst having stronger base stats, are merely generic reproductions of luxury and exotic cars, and by the time you'll unlock them, you'll put so many upgrades into one of the starter cars that you'll have no reason to start fresh with another model. See, every time you start a race, you can add one upgrade to a car of your choice, which include performance upgrades, cosmetic additions, and a nitro boost system.
So you can tell why even those of us with more refined gaming palates got suckered into playing it so many times in the arcades. I'm sorry.
Whilst this setup would have been acceptable in the arcades, by the standards of a home console game, this upgrade system pales massively compared to franchises such as Need for Speed or Forza Motorsport. The three performance upgrade categories are engines for acceleration, spoilers and wings for top speed, and tires for handling. But they also serve double duty as visual attachments in the form of these massive air blowers, triple-decker wings, and shiny rims.
Now, I only know about cars what I learned from Gran Turismo, but I can guess that these aren't the most effective ways to boost their respective acumen in the real world. But on the other hand, real improvements like a tightly tuned transmission or even a turbofan wouldn't show up on the outside of your car. And we've got to show those upgrades visually somehow, because extreme?
As I mentioned before, there's also the Nitrous, a one-time upgrade which gives you 3 fixed-length boosts every race. And then there are the neon lights and decals, which serve no practical purpose, but they sure look cool. Unfortunately, you only get one decal pattern for each car, and even changing your paint or neon color is a chore. Instead of cycling through a preset pattern of colors, pressing the change button picks a new color at random, meaning you can spend a lot of time until you get the one you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, they just didn't care. While we're on the subject of time wasters, the loading times are pretty nasty, averaging 30 to 45 seconds for one race. And that's longer than most individual loads in the 2006 Sonic the Hedgehog, if you can believe that.
Masaka.
Dude, have you even played that Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yeah. Demo, reisu no jikan wa nande ka?
Something like 2 minutes. And if you restart a race, the system will have to load it all again. Yep, another 30 to 45 seconds of your life wasted.
Yurusenai.
Dude, don't be so quick to break out the U word. So, what lies beyond these loading screens?
A race of 8 cars on generally unchallenging tracks, so unchallenging that you'll have to work up to the harder extreme courses until you get to material that would prove the slightest hint of a challenge by the standards of any other racing game. Half of most tracks are nothing but straightaways, and even when there are curves, there's seldom a need to brake or even let go of the accelerator in order to survive them. Yeah, sure, you'll have to stay awake to dodge traffic, both with and against your direction, and to crash into the occasional shortcut, but for the most part, Snoozeville.
I'm going to bring up the Initial D game again in order to juxtapose their approaches to track design. And bear with me here, I have no idea how exactly these two games were made and what approaches they took in regards to track design. This is all just personal conjecture. That said,
a good racing game, for example the Initial D or even Gran Turismo series, makes you really take the time to learn its courses inside and out. Each curve and corner has its own personality, i.e., what's the ideal line for going through them and which speed to enter them at. Those other games I just mentioned are stocked full of them, and it's the experience of learning these racing lines that contributes to a memorable experience among its peers. In other words, the environment comes first and the track is designed around it. Cruis'n seems to have it the other way around. The track designs are overly linear, so driving game veterans will have precious few opportunities to apply what they've learned over their years of experience in good driving games. Heck, its spiritual predecessor, Cruis'n USA, had more involved courses than this. As a result of this linearity, each section of the course feels identical until you reach a section that has a slightly different setting from the last, only for the visual boredom to set in a few seconds later, and so on. And geographical verisimilitude? Forget about it. A few landmarks aren't enough to convince me that your generic city is New York or San Francisco or whatever. Pardon my nitpicking, but the Brooklyn Bridge does not lead directly into the World Trade Center area, nor is the Statue of Liberty found on Manhattan Island. And would it kill you to make a Philadelphia stage? Not helping matters is the physics model, which, dare I say it, is unrealistic. You might knock the other car into a tailspin and keep on cruising, pardon the pun. Or you might get flipped into the air in a predefined animation. Nothing like both cars stopping dead in their tracks or anything, like in the real world, which wouldn't work in this game anyway, because, wouldn't you know it, there's no way to go backwards. See, that's how you can tell whether a racing game takes itself seriously or not. If you're not able to turn around and go the wrong way, that is not a good sign. Other than that, I guess the controls are alright. Since steering is handled by tilting the Wii remote, you can use one of those plastic Wii wheel contraptions. Although woe betide you if you choose the loose steering setting. It's tough to consistently win races at first, but you might get somewhere once you start bolting on some upgrades. Then again, the computer never uses nitros if you haven't yet installed them in their cars, so I don't even think upgrades matter to begin with. The competition's rubber band AI is so prevalent that, while it's easy to consistently place in the top 3, getting first place has more to do with luck than skill. It made sense in the arcade versions, which would award a free game if you finished in first place, but not for a home console game. Not only do you not have to pay up to $1 per race, but you're supposed to keep playing to unlock content. If you absolutely must win, I suppose I could give you some tips. It helps if you don't hit traffic, no surprises there, or if you double tap the throttle and perform a car flip over a rival, which apparently gives you a speed boost. Let me say that again. Victory in this game depends not on traditional driving skill, but on mindlessly mashing the accelerator button. See, this is why the rest of the world thinks Americans are stupid. Our racing games have less to do with substance than spectacle. Boku wa baka yanai, Kevin-kun.
Thanks, I needed that. You're not coming on to me, are you?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway...
The graphics in the earlier Cruis'n series have always been a little behind the curve, and this game is no exception. Even though the traditional pop-up from the earlier Cruis'n games is a thing of the past, there is still a bit of slowdown at the start of the race, where all 8 cars are on screen at once. That problem doesn't rear its ugly head much afterwards. On the contrary, Cruis'n on the Wii adds a little motion blur effect not used in the arcade Fast and Furious games. But more glaring than any technical aspect is the garish and dorky presentation. For example, when you trigger a nitro, your speed boost is accompanied by a male announcer shouting, "Nitrous!" and the word nitrous scrolling across the screen. Because... extreme? And yet, despite how in-your-face the aesthetics are, they're just so low-rent. The music is just generic drum and bass, so much so that I can't remember a single tune as of this recording. And the sound design is jacked, with tire squealing noises lasting long after you end a drift. Now that's just broken. All things considered, this game's attitude is phony, much in the way that Holden Caulfield is not. But even without the embarrassing presentation, this game still isn't worth picking up. The experience is less a true driving simulation and more a 3D representation of one of those old Atari-era racing games, and even though the features which made the arcade version such a guilty pleasure are present in full force, namely the upgrade system and nothing else, the actual gameplay will leave you bored long before you manage to fully upgrade even one of those cars, much less all of them. If that should serve as an inspiration for you to switch to a more fulfilling racing experience, then by all means succumb to those urges. Cruis'n scores 30%, an F.
This is Kevin with Ichigo, and you are the Resistance. I don't always ask for subscribers, but when I do, nitrous! Stay thirsty, my friends.